While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. There was no place for the Holy Family to stay. A phrase that we hear about year after year on Christmas Eve as we gather for services, but I'm not quite sure that we really ponder, to borrow a word from Mary, that phrase long enough. Mary's got to be scared out of her mind. She's an unwed teenager who's going on this journey to Bethlehem of all places, some no-name town in the bend of a road, kind of like hell, Michigan is. Her fiancé, Joseph, is the guy who lived in Bethlehem when he was born, and because of this decree from the Roman Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered or counted so that they could pay the taxes to the great and mighty Rome, they had to go. When they get there, everyone else and their brothers are there in town too, taking up all the places to stay. It gets old after a while, seeing those neon lights that say no vacancy as you pass by, every single blessed place that would remotely have room or someplace. But no luck. None. There isn't anyone willing to give a room to a pregnant teenager and her fiancé who are supposed to bear the Son of the Most High God. They finally find a little bit of shelter in the backwoods of Bethlehem, in the place where the animals eat and sleep and poop. The baby is wrapped in bands of cloth and laid in that stone thing that is a manger. Welcome, little Jesus. Welcome, child of God. Sorry, there's no place for you right now. I suppose you can't really blame the people at Bethlehem, though. They didn't know Mary was carrying a holy child. Nobody knew, really. Mary barely knew. She was told by the angel Gabriel that she would bear a son with the help of God, and this child would be named Jesus, and he will be great and will rule his people with a kingdom that will have no end. But the kicker is, before the angel tells her all of that, the angel says to Mary, "Greetings, favored one. Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God." Mary consents and says, "Let it be with me according to your word." But I'm sure that she was still just a little bit skeptical. Her, a simple, plain teenage girl, what did she do to find favor with God? Tonight, God's promise comes true, and Mary delivers Jesus in a most humble, unconventional, crazy way to welcome to the world the Son of God. But again, the people of Bethlehem didn't know. Mary and Joseph knew, and now, tonight, the shepherds know too. They are the ones who get the announcement of Jesus' birth in a most glorious way. An angel of the Lord shows up and tells them not to be afraid, and then announces the best news that anyone could hear, that to them is born this day in the city of David a Savior who is the Messiah, the Lord. Perhaps anticipating that they wouldn't believe it, a multitude of the heavenly hosts show up, praising God and proclaiming God's peace to those whom God favors. A multitude of the heavenly hosts, an army, all the angels, the ones who are still in training, the interns, the camera crew, everybody comes down to proclaim the message to the shepherds, the lowest of low on the social ladder, the ones whom Facebook probably wouldn't even enable a like button for. This is the story of Christmas. This is the good news that we often tend to romanticize on our cards and our nativity sets, and maybe even in some of our songs. But the birth of Jesus, the Son of God, was rather ordinary and plain And the news of Jesus' birth doesn't come to Augustus Caesar or to Quirinius or to the nobility, but to an unwed teenager and a scared fiance and a lowly, disgusting, smelling bunch of shepherds. What a cast of characters. Seriously, these people, yes, these people, and us too. You see, we are a rather crazy bunch of people too, you know. We don't have it all together as we should or even as we might want of ourselves. We bring with us hopes and fears and moments of excitement, but also failing. And we come with no right to expect God's attention or favor, just like Mary and the shepherds. We come this evening bringing our best and our worst, our pain and our elation, our grief and our hope to hear this story again. And all that I can say is I am so glad you're here. Why? Because this is our story. My hope as we leave this place tonight is that you would hear this good news again, that to us is born a Savior, the Messiah, the Lord. But that we not only really hear it, but that we receive it with all the wonder and the joy and the shock and the surprise and the confusion and maybe even a little bit of fear that comes when you hear good news that sounds way too good to be true. My hope is that we receive this good news with all of those emotions because this is the story that will really tell you the truth about who you are. Sisters and brothers, like Mary and the shepherds, we are those whom God has called and favored and honored and elected and elevated. We are all God's beloved children, and the whole of the Christmas story and really the rest of the story of Jesus, his life, his ministry, his death, his resurrection, and ascension is intended to remind us, to comfort us, and to cement within our minds and our hearts God's love and presence so that we might share that good news with others. Now, all of this doesn't mean that our life will be perfect or always happy or free of pain and suffering, but this story, this Christmas story, the birth of Jesus, is the story where God changes the world. It's the story where God shows up not to the powerful in the middle of a Roman powerhouse census, but to the people on the margins and the fringes and the periphery, the ones who are the nobodies, the ones who make mistakes, the ones who disappoint, the ones whom God favors. As we hear this Christmas story yet again, I hope we are surprised once more when we realize that in the birth of Jesus, we are also reborn as children of God, and we are the ones precisely to whom the good news is told. God enters into our world in the most intimate act of love, taking on human flesh and all that comes with it, and coming to the margins and the out-of-the-way places, to unexpected people who have found favor with God. That includes us, and that is life-changing news. News, dear friends, that as we share it, will keep making headlines on the internet and in the papers and the TVs and the radio stations until all people, all of us, have been embraced and find ourselves lost in God's world-rocking love, and until all of us bear the good news again that to us is born this day a Savior, who is the Messiah, Christ, the Lord. To us. To us. Amen.